Bizarre Nathan. This is Hallway Ski Reviews, and today we're going to review the Moment Deathwish 96. This ski has some unique specs. They have the triple camber, which is basically what it sounds like. Three kind of wave-like high spots or low spots. I guess it's 4 low spots, 3 high spots in the camber, and quite a bit of tip and tail rocker. I mean, this thing has, rocker is all the way down there. That is pretty large. Tail rocker is not quite as long, but it's pretty long still. And, these skis do have a fair bit of splay as well. The ski itself weighs, I think it's 1880 is what they have it on their website as. And, that puts it into the kind of medium-low weight, I would say, for this width ski. It does have a -6 mount point from center. If I were to have guessed prior to, reading up on the specs, I would have guessed this thing somewhere in like 4.5 from center, because it does feel very well balanced. It does feel fairly well centered on the ski, and you tend to have to ski this less directionally, less pressuring the tips and more kind of centered stance over the ski. So this is definitely for, somebody who wants to be in the park or wants to have a more pivoty, even ski, something that's, weighted well for, hitting jumps and catching air and doing spins, that kind of stuff. Like, this falls right in line with that. The conditions today were a little weird. Did a one-day demo on these, and it was kind of like firm spring conditions, a lot of ice up there. There's like whole slopes of ice, and then pushed around, scraped off snow, kind of like piling up. And then the off-piste was pretty firm as well, but the off-piste was pretty good. I wasn't able to trust the carving of the ski, even though I do think that it probably would do pretty darn good on firm snow, or on firm packed powder and softer. Moment calls this their low tide hero, and I think that's probably pretty accurate. I don't necessarily know how well this is going to do in deep snow. 96 underfoot, it's going to do okay. It does have a lot of tip and tail rocker. That's going to help a lot. And it is pretty like pivoty, and it does tend to kind of like sit sideways. So it is a ski that you can kind of just straight sideways, which is really fun. If you've never skied a ski like that, this is a great example of something that you can kind of just turn sideways and drift, and then turn it back, and it's super fun. I spent most of my day, because on-piste was pretty horrid today. I did try carving a bit. It was hard to trust it on the ice. The pushed around piles of snow, like they weren't long enough to really engage a turn and really pressure into it. So I can't say whether or not, this thing will rip a turn or not on, I'm sure it does on good snow. Like, as sharp as the edges are, the shape, the taper, being up higher from the rocker, like, I bet this thing can rip a good turn. That said, it is a more centered stance. That -6 from center, you do have to ski it upright, centered, not in a directional format, even though the tip to tail taper is about 10 millimeters, which is, that puts you squarely in the directional format too. So it's a unique ski. I had a lot of fun on off-piste terrain on this today, and like I did ski this a little different just because of the stance and its mentality to be really pivoty. It does kind of feel reminiscent of like the current generation Blizzard Wrestler 9 in being lightweight, sharp edges, and pretty maneuverable. When I was skiing this today, that was the ski that kind of popped up in my mind as being the comparative ski. And you know, I think the biggest exception there is just the mount point. The Rustler 9 feels way more directional, whereas this feels way more centered mounted, you know. So this thing's awesome though. It's super fun. It's super fun just to sit it sideways and kind of pivot through bumps, and you know, you could turn it on a dime. It's very responsive. I wouldn't say that it's super energetic, but it is very responsive. But anyways, so for who is this for? This is for somebody who, you know, wants an all mountain ski, but also wants to ski park, or, you know, somebody who wants to do spins and, you know, feel even in the air and like not, you know, an out of balance ski where the tips are always dropping when you take off on the ground. Like, this is a very well-rounded, balanced ski in a way that, like, when you do leave the ground, it feels very well balanced, especially for a -6. Yeah, this thing's great. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask it in the comments below, and you know, check this thing out. It's super fun. I had a blast on it, even in the cruddy conditions today. So I'll see you on the next one, and we'll see what it is. Maybe I'll do a comparison of the Rustler 9 and these, and put some thoughts together on that, because that's kind of fun too. But I'll see you on the next one. This is Nathan, Hallway Ski Reviews, and like and subscribe below.
These skis just drift so nicely.
That's nice.
Like, that is one thing, like, they pivot